Hey guys, Michael here from michaelsherlock.com. I'm here with three awesome smartphones, and I'm just going to try to crown a winner out of all three of these. So what do we have? For AT&T, we have the Apple iPhone 4. For Sprint, we have the Samsung Epic 4G. And for Verizon Wireless, we have the Motorola Droid 2. Now let me preface this video just by saying that all these smartphones are excellent. If you're on AT&T, the iPhone 4 is a great phone. If you're on Sprint, the Epic 4G is an excellent model. And if you're on Verizon Wireless, the Droid 2 is an excellent solution for you. However, I think it's useful and would be fun to see, to crown one that reigns supreme, one smartphone king out of these three. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's just see what they look like compared to each other. So we'll put them on top of each other like that. As you can see, the iPhone 4 is significantly thinner than both these other devices, and it's just by far the smallest. Now, the reason for that is the iPhone 4 is just a candy bar. It's a very elegant design, but unlike these other two, does not have a full QWERTY keyboard. Now, the Epic 4G is the biggest, but like I just showed you, it has the biggest QWERTY keyboard, 5 rows, and it's just simply excellent to use. So these are touchscreen phones, so the screen that you're looking at is extremely critical to consider. So the iPhone 4, 3.5 inches, the perennial powerhouse with touchscreen phones. It was one of the first phones, the iPhone, to really bring touchscreen into the forefront of a smartphone technology. And with the iPhone 4, the Retina display with 326 pixels per inch is extremely crisp for text and video, and it's just a pleasure to use. I really enjoy using it. The Epic 4G uses a 4-inch Super AMOLED display for excellent contrast ratio and for really nice battery performance. That's 4 inches. The Droid 2 is kind of left out. It's 3.7 inches, so it's in the middle, has a resolution of 480 by 854, but it doesn't really have anything noticeable about it. These are all capacitive screens, but this is the least responsive. It doesn't necessarily have a really high ratio, and it doesn't necessarily have great darks, great color reproduction. So the Droid 2 is clearly in last place in this round. Now, it comes down to the iPhone 4 and the Epic 4G. Just because it's 4 inches and Super AMOLED for great battery performance, I'm going to have to give the nod to the Epic 4G in this round, the iPhone 4 coming just a tad bit in second. Now, for the next round, text input and messaging. That's one of the biggest things I use on a smartphone. In the past, taking or having phone calls was one of the biggest things people did. At this point, I think we've really transitioned to text messaging, text input, maybe even email, MMS, even social networking. So let's just do a little comparison of the text input. So the iPhone 4 has really been, was, the premier virtual keyboard because it is really good, and I just made a typo. I'm not good at typing on camera. I always get a little bit nervous. And of course, there is a landscape keyboard as well. Although I prefer the portrait board. I don't know. That's just my preference. But trust me, and suffice it to say, this keyboard is really pretty excellent, and it really trumped Android keyboards for a long time. However, as Android matured, it really did increase its usability. So it has a really good virtual QWERTY keyboard just built in, the stock Android, but both the Droid 2 and the Epic 4G also have swipe. So all you have to do is just swipe your fingers across the screen. And of course, this word was not correct. So you can just go ahead and try again. Fingers across the screen. I really like swiping. It has a landscape method as well. It's really pretty good. But I think the creme de la crop when we're talking about text input, virtual QWERTY keyboards. Now, I've said it before, but this is an excellent keyboard. I really do love this keyboard. It's one of the best mobile keyboards I've ever used. So there's really no discrediting. Samsung did an excellent job with the Epic 4G. Now, It's kind of sad to say, but the Droid 2 has the least responsive screen, so swipe and the other input methods aren't going to work as well. And unfortunately, this keyboard is the worst. One is not as good as the Epic 4G. It's not terrible, it's average, but I prefer other methods. In fact, I think swipe is better than that. So in this round, it's a fairly simple one. All the virtual keyboards are almost equal. Maybe the iPhone has a little bit of an edge, but swipe really gives the Android phones an advantage, and the Epic 4G is going to clearly have to take this round just because its physical QWERTY board is so good, its swipe input method is so excellent, and the screen is so responsive, just regular, everything works wonderfully. So next up, call quality and reception. I alluded to this in the last round. It's still quite important. Besides the antenna gate debacle, and I really haven't had a lot of issues with this, the reception for the iPhone 4 is one of the best I've seen for AT&T phones, even with the new algorithm for determining reception. The Epic 4G has solid 3G coverage, and 4G coverage is really as good as the Overdrive, which I have over here. This is just a dedicated 4G, 3G hotspot, and the 4G connection inside of the Sprint Epic 4G does a pretty good job. It's kind of hard to show you. But with the Droid 2, really quite disappointed with the 3G reception. I was in a room, I was in a building, zero coverage. I turned the device on, I couldn't get coverage. I went by the window, couldn't get coverage. A friend of mine had his LG Dare, which is an older phone for Verizon Wireless, but still on the same EVDO network, and he could connect and make calls and browse the web. So I don't know what's up with that. And for call quality, both the iPhone 4 really excelled, and the Epic 4G was impressive in its own right. But the Droid 2, again, lacking. It really was the worst of the three by far. It was very noticeable that it was a cell phone. It was tinny. It wasn't rich. It was flat. I was kind of disappointed with that. So call quality and reception is going to go to the Epic 4G because you get 3G and 4G coverage with great, speaking quality, and there were no gaping issues with terrible reception or antenna gate. Although, again, antenna gate really has been overblown by the media. So next up, speed. We really want our smartphones to blaze through the tasks that we do day to day. The iPhone 4 blazes with its A4 chip with iOS 4.1, and it really is a very great experience. The Epic 4G has a 1 GHz Hummingbird processor, and I really haven't had any hiccups with that. And the Droid 2 is using Texas Instruments OMAP 3631 GHz processor. So let's go ahead and do some tests here. Let's see how quickly it takes to, hold on, let me just make sure that I'm in the right mailbox here. Let's just see how quickly it would take to open up email. So I'm just going to try to do that at the same time. Clearly I wasn't as quick, but the experiences are very similar. These are both the same exact email libraries here. So let's just see. We can easily scroll through that without any problems or lag. The iPhone or the Epic 4G, again, no lag for the most part. And the experience really isn't as smooth on the Droid 2. So let's go ahead and try something else. So now let's test the browsers on these bad boys. We're going to go ahead and open them up. And we're going to test a few web pages. So the first one we're going to test is one that has been visited on all the devices. It's going to be michaelsherlock.com, a blog I'm sure you're familiar with. All at about the same time. These are all over the same Wi-Fi networks. And technically, the Droid 2 looked like it loaded first, followed by the iPhone 4 and Epic 4G in pretty rapid succession. And let's see if we can navigate around the page. There doesn't seem to be any issues. We can easily do that on the iPhone 4. A little bit of checkerboarding there, just as we were zooming. Not really noticing that on the Epic. What I think is really cool, though, is, did you see that? It just wrapped the text for you, which is a very useful feature. And again, due to the kind of questionable screen is kind of more difficult here. But what's cool about the Droid 2 browser, and what's something I need to mention, is it has Android 2.2 and Adobe Flash 10.1. So if there was inline Flash content, you could play that on here. So let's try another website, ESPN. I am just a huge sports fan, so that's a big website for me. And they're off. The iPhone 4, clearly the slowest in that round. And let's go to the bottom. And not really any issues here. This is the mobile page. So we can try one more website. This is a website that I have not loaded on any of the phones. TED.com. If you've never seen a TED Talk, you're really missing out. So I just had some technical difficulties. So let's try loading it one more time. And as you can see, the Epic was first, followed by the iPhone 4 very swiftly, and in last place was the Droid 2. This is kind of a little bit of a sampling of what I've found. Really, from most of my tests, from applications to websites, the iPhone 4 was just a tad faster and as a mean score, followed really closely by the Epic 4G, and that TI processor of the Droid 2 came in third in most of my tests. So let's talk about multimedia for a second. The iPhone 4 has a front-facing camera for FaceTime, as well as a really good 5-megapixel high-definition recording camera with flash on the back. The Epic 4G has similar specifications. It has a front-facing camera with basically the same resolution, and a rear-facing camera with flash of about the same resolution. And picture quality and image quality on both these devices is really good. In fact, if you are a follower of my Around the Tech video recap series, one of those episodes, I don't remember off the top of my head which one, was recorded on the iPhone 4. And a lot of people didn't notice and were really impressed by that. So that's just an FYI. Sadly though, the Droid 2 really falters in this category. No front-facing camera. The 5-megapixel camera on this is almost the same as the one on the original Droid. It does not have HD video recording. It's really pretty much a big letdown in that regard. So no front-facing camera for video chat. So the iPhone 4 and the Epic 4G are very close in content creation for the crown in this category. But Android offers many more formats of playback than Apple's iPhone 4, and it is expandable via micro SD. So if you have a lot of content on your device, you can extend it, whereas the iPhone 4, you're limited to 32 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes. So the Epic 4G takes that category. Now the final category in this smartphone smackdown is battery life. All of these will get you through the day without any issues, and that's really critical. I think we've all accepted that we're going to be charging our smartphone power-sucking babies every single day, but we need to make sure they all get you through. So, the Epic 4G, though, I just like to preface this, is the worst when it's on 4G. And there's nothing you can really say about that. The 4G radio is new, it's the newer technology, bada bing, bada boom, it's definitely going to be the least efficient. But on 3G, this is basically how it stacks up. The iPhone 4 is a little bit better than the Epic 4G, which is a little bit better than the Droid 2. Although they'll all get you, again, all get you through the day. That's just what I'd like to say about that. So if we recap this, the touchscreen on the Epic 4G actually won. In text input and messaging, the Epic 4G won again, because not only does it have an excellent virtual QWERTY board, but it has swipe and an extremely good physical QWERTY board. For call quality and reception, the Epic 4G won again because it had solid 3G coverage, really good 4G reception, and call quality sounded really nice. Speed, the iPhone 4 won just by a hair over the Epic 4G. And in multimedia, the Epic 4G took the crown because of Android giving it more expandability and the extra micro SD expansion slot. And the iPhone 4 won battery life round just by a hair, again, over the Epic 4G. So if we need to crown one champion of these three smartphones, the Epic 4G is going to take the crown. Congratulations. This phone is a highly recommended. I really love using this phone. Again, I'm Michael Sherlock from michaelsherlock.com. The Epic 4G is better than the iPhone 4 and the Droid 2, and I hope you've just seen why. Thanks for watching. Rate, comment, and subscribe, and have a nice day.